But first this noon, some fireworks in the courtroom where ex-mayor Kwame Kilpatrick claims there is a conflict of interest with his own attorney in his federal corruption case. Good afternoon. The prosecutor says it's just a ploy, though, to delay this trial.
But today, a federal judge refused to remove Kwame Kilpatrick's attorney from the case. Let's begin with 7 investigator Heather Catallo live at the federal courthouse. Heather, we understand things got pretty heated in that courtroom, huh?
Very heated. Kwame Kilpatrick argued passionately that he just does not trust his lawyer anymore, but the judge did not buy it, and she said Jim Thomas has to stay on this case. Now, as we were the first to report, this conflict of interest issue focuses on a witness. Well, that witness is Gasper Fiore, the owner of Boulevard and Trumbull Towing. Now, Fiore is the towing contractor cited in the indictment that charges Kilpatrick with bribery, extortion, and racketeering. Now, according to the indictment, Kilpatrick and Bobby Ferguson extorted Fiore by getting more than $90,000 from him. Now, the conflict arose because Jim Thomas represented Fiore back in 2005. But Thomas says neither he nor Kilpatrick realized that Fiore would be such a material witness for the government until a week ago on Friday when they got some grand jury testimony delivered to them. Kilpatrick told the judge that he and Thomas can't even communicate right now due to this conflict, and every conversation ends in screaming matches. But the government decided to drop the charges that involve Fiore. So the judge said there's no conflict and Thomas has to stay on the case.
Well, I think this is part of the process of moving forward. The issue was squarely put in front of the judge. She made her ruling, and now we have to get ready.
Is there really such a breakdown in the relationship as Mr. Kilpatrick described?
I'm not in a position to criticize or refute what it is that he said. That's what he felt. He said it to the court. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to trial now. And so at this point, pick up the pieces and get ready.
The core issue is twofold. One, that there is probably an actual conflict because Mr. Thomas has represented a witness. Secondly, now he doesn't trust him because he was not aware of that situation and not aware of that witness. You would think that also that perhaps the government should have keyed the court into this earlier. Under the Jinx Act, they have a right to withhold materials up until the time a witness testifies. But in a case like this, where they know there is a potential conflict of interest from the grand jury from quite some time ago, you have to wonder why they didn't disclose this early on, and then we wouldn't have a problem so late in the game, so to speak.
Now, as far as Jim Thomas is concerned, essentially, in a way, they sort of won one today. They got a charge dropped against Kwame Kilpatrick, but it was ugly to essentially see two people who have worked together since 2008 kind of try to divorce each other in open court. Kilpatrick was very, very clear in saying he just doesn't trust his lawyer anymore. But the bottom line is Jim Thomas has to stay on the case, and I have to point out that this could definitely become an issue on appeal if Kilpatrick is convicted. Reporting live at the federal courthouse in downtown Detroit, I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News. Joanne, back to you.
Yeah, I think that thought crossed a lot of people's minds. Heather, so much talk about this being a delay tactic.
Well, definitely the government was trying to hint at that in their arguments today. And of course, I cannot get inside Kwame Kilpatrick's mind, but legal experts tell me he had a legitimate issue. This was a big deal. You have a right to have your attorney not have a conflict, and this was a legitimate issue that had to be dealt with in court. The judge made her decision. She said if any other witnesses like this kind of issue come up in the future, they will appoint an independent counsel to cross-examine those witnesses. But as a defendant, he wants to go after these witnesses aggressively, and if your lawyer has represented one of those in the past, how do you do that? So if this comes up again, they will appoint an independent counsel.
All right, Heather Catallo, great insight down from federal court. Thanks so much, Heather.
When protective services take children from their parents, state law says a judge must first personally review the case and sign off on it. But that was not happening in one of Michigan's busiest courts.
7 Action News investigator Heather Catallo takes on a system and a local judge for failing to protect parents' rights.
It's called rubber stamping, and last August, we first exposed how court staff were literally taking one of these and stamping a judge's name onto orders that allowed the state to take kids from their parents. After our investigations, the rubber stamping stopped, but no one has ever been held accountable. Not the judge, not the chief judge, or Child Protective Services.
Why was this allowed to happen in your court?
I understand.
This is Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Leslie Kim Smith. She's the presiding judge here at the James Lincoln Hall of Justice, the county's juvenile court. It was her name that had been stamped on removal orders like this one. And legal experts tell us that stamp allowed children to be taken from their parents illegally.
Are you going to talk to us or not?
I'll have more on our fight for information from the court and the state. But first, let's take a look at how the practice called rubber stamping came to light.
I knew the system was broken, but I didn't know it was this broken, where anyone, literally anyone, could come and take your child.
Marianne Godboldo's case made international news after she was accused of firing a gun when police officers and Child Protective Services came to take her daughter in March of 2011. They showed up at her door after Godboldo told 2 local agencies that she was working with her doctor to wean her daughter off the controversial antipsychotic medication Risperdal. Godboldo's lawyers say those agencies reported her to CPS. And after that happened, a caseworker used this rubber-stamped court order that a judge later called invalid to take then 13-year-old Ariana from her mother. Under Michigan law, unless it's an emergency where a child is in imminent danger, Child Protective Services workers are supposed to request a hearing in front of a judge, where the parents accused of neglect or abuse can tell their side of the story before a child is removed from the home. But court insiders tell us that wasn't happening in Wayne County.
It is completely illegal.
What does that mean for the children of Wayne County?
What it means is that they are in greater danger of being removed from their home unnecessarily.
University of Michigan law professor Joshua Kay says under Michigan law, a judge must personally review a child removal order.
I think it's important to emphasize the tremendous impact of a decision to remove a child. It is one of the most wrenching things that can happen in a child's life, in the life of a family, and it changes people's lives forever.
This process is called rubber stamping. Last August, the day after the 7 Action News investigators confirmed that the rubber stamping had been going on, the court stopped doing it. After we exposed the practice, the State Supreme Court Administrator's Office, or SCAO, sent this memo to all the family courts in the state, recommending they review their procedures. An SCAO official also told Wayne County's chief judge that the rubber stamping must stop. The court is now using an iPad for their on-call judge to review after-hours child removal orders electronically. But we knew there was more to the story. How many children had been taken illegally? How long had rubber stamping been going on? Some court insiders tell us it's been happening for decades. But those are questions no one seems to want to answer. Last fall, we asked the court in writing for all their records on removal orders going back to 2009, but they won't provide them. And guess what? The court doesn't have to because it's not subject to public information laws. After Judge Leslie Kim Smith and her boss, Chief Judge Virgil Smith, denied our many requests for information, we caught up with the juvenile court judge on her way into work.
Hi, Judge Smith. I'm Heather Catallo from Channel 7. I'd like to talk to you about the rubber stamping that's been going on in the court.
Judge Smith tried to pass us off to the court's lawyer, the same one who denied our earlier requests for information on child removal records.
And we'd like to talk to you. It was your name that was on those removal orders that was rubber stamped.
All right, well, you'll need to talk to Liz Colcap, who's the general counsel for the court.
But it was your name on those orders. Why was this allowed to happen in your court?
I understand.
Are you going to talk to us or not?
Have a good day.
We also asked the state's Department of Human Services, which oversees protective services, for the same information. They wanted to charge us nearly $33,000 for the public records request. Following one of our first stories a year ago about child removals, DHS Director Maura Corrigan refused to speak to us on camera. The day after our investigation aired, Corrigan wrote this opinion piece in the Detroit Free Press. The headline, "Removing children from families always follows legal procedures." Now that that's been proven to be false, a DHS spokesman says they haven't done anything to find out if kids were wrongly taken from homes, but instead they are addressing structural deficiencies within the system.
This system is destroying the future of America. And if something is not done about it, we won't have a future.
Marianne Godboldo is now suing the state, the county, and Detroit police for illegally taking her child. As for her criminal case for allegedly firing a gun, a judge threw it out because he said the removal order used to take her daughter was not valid, and there was no evidence that she fired the shot. I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News.
Closed about an hour ago, but voters are still in areas voting, still standing in long lines, waiting to cast their ballots.
Absolutely. It's happening in Ferndale right now. We are live there with 7 Action News reporter Heather Catallo. Heather, what can you tell us?
Well, the line here is still very, very long. We're at University High School in Ferndale. The precinct, of course, is closed, but take a look up here. I want to show you. You can look through this window, and you can see how long the line is. It goes all the way down this corridor, and if you can see all the way to the end, it snakes around to the left all the way down that corridor as well. Just a few moments ago, I spoke to the last voter in line. She made it in just in time. Her name's Karen. She's at the very end. We're kind of keeping an eye on how long it's taken her to get to the front. I just walked through the line a minute ago and asked people when they got here. So when we got here earlier, it was a 2.5-hour wait. It is still a 2.5-hour wait. One gentleman that just came out told me he felt like it was more like 3 hours. There's actually been a woman walking through selling chips and pop and getting people food. Because remember, a lot of these people came right from work to come vote here, so they're literally buying stuff in line while they're waiting to cast their ballot. But they are determined to stay in line. They feel voting is so important, they're not going home until they cast their ballots. Back to you guys.
A lot of these people standing in line, they know that some of these races are being called and they haven't been voted yet.
Well, they haven't voted yet, and they are all on their smartphones, so I don't know if they're watching that or not, but they feel very strongly about a lot of the issues on the ballot. They're not leaving till they're done.
Imagine walking to dinner or to a ball game and a brick like this falls from a 14-story building. It's happened, and city building inspectors are very worried someone is going to get hurt or killed. So we demanded answers from the owners of some of downtown Detroit's most dangerous buildings.
When this pile of bricks tumbled off the crumbling Wurlitzer building, Chris Jazik wasn't surprised.
It's scary. It was scary before.
It's not the first time Jazik has had to endure concrete bricks and chunks of mortar raining down on his home and business, which are adjacent to the vacant high-rise. Jazik has operated the performance space and cafe known as 1515 Broadway for decades. Last year, a 40-pound concrete wall cap from the Wurlitzer landed on Jazik's roof, busting wooden beams that shattered his windows.
And the reality is that could happen anytime, all the time, anytime. So there's not a time off from it. It's stressful.
So who owns this building that the city calls a menace?
You don't have anything to say about letting this building just sit there and have pieces of it fall?
We'll tell you more about the owner in a moment, but first, let's take a look at how many blight violations he's received for the Wurlitzer since 2008. More than 100. That's why the city took the owner to court last year, saying that despite the tremendous risk of severe injury and/or death to members of the public, the owner had failed to make the building safe.
To not do what they were ordered to do is criminal, and it is. I mean, that's the point. That's why they've gotten violations for years.
Jazik isn't the only one at risk from the decaying Wurlitzer. Take a look at how close the people mover track is to the building, and the city is most worried about those 600-pound terracotta corner pieces that look like they could fall at any time. Wayne County Circuit Court Judge Robert Colombo has ordered the owner to fix the building and calls the Wurlitzer case the most important one on his docket because someone could get seriously hurt. So who is this owner who's been ignoring orders from the court? His name is Paul Curtis. He's an attorney in Detroit and married to a Wayne County Circuit Court judge.
I'm Heather Catallo from Channel 7. We need to talk to you about the Wurlitzer building. Why haven't you made that building safe? Aren't you worried that somebody could get hurt? How do you sleep at night? Why won't you talk to us about this building? Why haven't you been complying with the court's orders?
Curtis has been in violation of Colombo's orders for months. Even Wayne County took Curtis to court back in 2005, but Jazik says little progress was ever made. Curtis isn't the only downtown building owner who's in the crosshairs of the city's Building Safety and Engineering Department, accused of ignoring blight and safety violations. In March, tumbling bricks from the 107-year-old Hotel Charlevoix crashed through the roof of this parked car. A few weeks later, high winds sent shards of glass sailing through the air onto the street below at Park and Elizabeth.
How big of a priority is it for the city of Detroit to monitor and keep track of these unsafe buildings?
It is our #1 priority right now.
John Martin is the assistant chief building inspector for the city. He says they've been ticketing and issuing corrective orders against the owner, Troy attorney Ralph Sachs, since 2008.
What do you think about these property owners that basically just kind of ignore the city when you're trying to keep people safe?
Well, I don't have much to say about their character. I mean, to me, it seems like if you have a building with bricks falling off of it, you would take care of it because, you know, it could be harmful to the public.
Martin says Sachs wouldn't fix the facade of the building until just recently when they hauled him in front of a judge. On the day we visited the Charlevoix, Martin was surprised to discover the owner was actually on site.
He's going
to get his car.
Yeah.
At least he was until we tried to talk to him.
Hey, Ralph!
Ralph Sachs took off and would not return our calls to answer questions about his building that's been raining bricks. His attorney later told us Sachs is complying with the court's orders. City inspectors are now launching a blitz, demanding engineering reports from owners of any building taller than 5 stories. The Wurlitzer and the Charlevoix are just 2 of the 7 most dangerous buildings in downtown Detroit. The others include 115 State Street, 1265 Griswold, 2001 Park, also owned by Ralph Sachs, the Vinton building at 600 Woodward, and this building on Washington Boulevard near Grand River. The city wants them fixed, and so do the die-hard downtowners like Chris Jazik.
I'm a Detroiter. I'm not going to go anywhere, and if this is part of what we have to go through to make it better, then let's do it.
City attorneys tell me that Judge Colombo is holding regular meetings with the owner of the Wurlitzer to make sure Curtis is taking steps to make the building safer. Since we confronted the owner, he has improved the scaffolding near the building to protect pedestrians. And on Friday, he finally removed the heavy corner pieces on the front of the Wurlitzer. If you would like more information about the 7 most dangerous buildings in downtown Detroit, please head to our website, WXYZ.com. I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News.
Serious business turned funny at times as the defense cross-examined wealthy businessman Tony Suave in the Kilpatrick corruption trial. 7 Action News investigator Heather Catallo is live downtown. And Heather, sounds like he had the courtroom laughing quite a bit today.
Yes, he did. Tony Suave not only bolstered the government's case today, he had the jury cracking up. And legal experts tell me that being a likable witness can really help your credibility. While defense attorneys tried to portray the CEO of Suave Enterprises as a tough guy today who can't be intimidated by politicians, Tony Suave described himself instead as lovable. And it appeared the jury was loving this government witness. Federal prosecutors say former Detroit Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick extorted Suave by frequently using Suave's private jets without paying him back. Those pricey trips were first exposed by the 7 Action News investigators back in 2008. Suave also testified that after he asked Kilpatrick why his sewer lining contract wasn't moving forward, Kilpatrick told him to hire his friend, contractor Bobby Ferguson. Kilpatrick, Ferguson, and Kilpatrick's father are on trial, accused of running a criminal enterprise through extortion and racketeering. When Kilpatrick defense lawyer Harold Gurewitz questioned why Suave wasn't remembering all the details of the meeting he had with the former mayor about Ferguson, Suave quipped, "Well, I don't have dementia, if that's what you're saying." The entire courtroom erupted with laughter, including the jurors. When Ferguson attorney Mike Rattay suggested the head of a multi-billion-dollar business empire isn't easily pushed around by anyone, Suave mostly agreed with him, with the exception of his grandkids and Mr. Rattay.
I don't think Mr. Suave can get rattled, do you?
At times, the judge had to scold Rattay as he tried to question Suave about what he knew about the contracting process in Detroit.
We're not trying to entertain, we're trying to get to the truth. But Mr. Suave is a colorful individual, and, you know, he's got his a way about him, and I got my way about me, and, you know, so we had a little fun up there together.
Rattay got Suave to admit he had no direct knowledge of Kilpatrick holding up his contract. Suave testified that when Ferguson tried to throw his weight around with Suave's employees, he was worried there would be repercussions with the mayor if Ferguson wasn't kept happy. Ultimately, though, Suave got fed up, saying for another water department deal, Ferguson could go fly a kite.
No matter what side you're on, either the prosecution or the defense, when you're putting up a witness, someone that you want the jury to believe, you want the jury to like that person, because chances are if they like the person, it's more likely that they're actually going to believe their testimony.
Defense lawyers still have to finish cross-examining Mr. Suave. They still have to ask about all those private plane rides, and they're likely to try to show that Mr. Kilpatrick and Mr. Suave were quite good friends, so we'll see how that plays with the jury. Reporting live at the federal courthouse in downtown Detroit, I'm Heather Catallo, 7 Action News.